So here we go. I'm going to be going live. I am live. I just have to set up my makeshift camera holder. I'm live. Okay, I'm kind of short. Put this down a little bit. John Houston here. Gonna be just talking about the Will Smith Oscar controversy. You've heard about it from a million perspectives. Podcasters have talked about it. But I don't think a single human being that I've listened to with my ears, other than Denzel Washington, has talked about it from a spiritual perspective. I consider myself spiritual focused, spiritual minded, spiritually continually seeing the world from a spiritual perspective. A spiritual perspective isn't a hippie wearing a tie-dye shirt going, far out, that's really spiritual, man. Like, we're going to the moon tonight, man? That's really spiritual, man. Yeah, man, that's as spiritual as it gets, man. That's not spiritual. That's the exact opposite of spiritual, all right? Spiritual is about spirit entities. And Denzel Washington touched upon this. Denzel Washington said during the commercial break after Will Smith's actions at the Oscars, Denzel comforted Will Smith and said to him, "At your highest moment, be careful. That's when the devil comes for you." And when Will Smith won the Oscar for Best Actor for the movie King Richard, he included that in his speech because he was so poignant, it cut him to the soul. He understood. That's a very spiritual message. I have to share that. And as ungodly as Hollywood is, the entire crowd clapped at Denzel's words when Will Smith repeated them. At your highest moment, be careful. That's when the devil comes for you. If you recall, Christian Bale, back in 2011, won the Oscar for The Fighter. And he was famously in the news not too long before he won the Oscar for going on a tirade of dropping the F-bomb 40 times in 4 minutes. See? Human beings might have not known, or they probably did at the time, but I'm trying to approach this from a spiritual perspective. Human beings don't know how high and mighty and prideful and full of wickedness a human being is compared to another human being. Spirit entities can see right through a human being, see the height of wickedness, see the height of pompous, arrogant righteousness, self-righteousness, just egotistical. A spirit can see that immediately, within seconds. They might have to walk through the human being to gauge that type of information, but they can get it. And Christian Bale was in that status. He was in that realm. And he wins the Best Oscar for Best Actor. He wins the Oscar for Best Actor. It was Terminator Salvation set. A lighting man walked across the room or maybe dropped something or whatever. The lighting man made a mistake. He walked during a live taping when he shouldn't have, or maybe he dropped something and messed up the whole scene. It was possibly an accident, you know. Christian Bale yells at him for 4 minutes straight, drops the F-bomb 40 times. And whether you think that's justified or not, he was definitely, even Christian Bale apologized for it. He said, I was acting like a punk. And I'm sure Will Smith feels bad to an extent because he has apologized a couple times. He apologized to the Academy in his speech, then he apologized to Chris in an Instagram post. At your highest moment, be careful. That's when the devil comes for you. Very strong message, very strong spiritual insight I would say Denzel Washington probably has a heightened sense of spiritual perception, that he can see beyond the Hollywood mirrors and smoke and BS. And he can see this is a room full of negative entities, perhaps. Perhaps I'm reading too much into it. Perhaps Denzel is just talking about on the physical plane, the physical level. But I like to go deeper into the spiritual level. This is a room full of Hollywood elite, A-listers, B-listers, C-listers, seated in that order. And Will Smith's in the front with his wife. Chris Rock said he didn't know. At least that's what I read. At this point, I heard Chris Rock and Will Smith hugged and everything's fine at the Vanity Fair party. And then I hear later that never happened. That's a fabrication. So you can't believe everything you read. Not everything you read is factual. Because Chris Rock didn't speak with Will Smith at the Vanity Fair party. They haven't spoken since the incident. Chris Rock is definitely a professional. He was dignified. He didn't even move his hands to block the punch or the slap. And what I noticed is it was a punch that changed into a slap. So initially, Will Smith was going to punch him, and it looks like, to me, and then he changes it to a slap. And Chris Rock said he's not going to follow up. He's not going to press anything against Will. And it's an unfortunate incident on both sides. But I saw Jim Carrey's response saying it was disgusting and how Chris Rock never deserved to get slapped in the face at the Oscars. I disagree with Jim Carrey many a times. I think he's a very entertaining comedian, very entertaining actor, but I disagree with him many times. When I heard that, I agreed with him immediately. So I'm surprised to actually agree with Jim Carrey on something other than comedy and movies, because Jim Carrey's a comedian, Chris Rock's a comedian. Comedians stick together. Adam Sandler has Chris Rock's back. And many, many, many comedians are getting behind Chris Rock and supporting him. Chris Rock has a new tour, the Ego Death Tour or something. I'm sure it'll be interesting. But Denzel Washington's words, at your highest moment, be careful, that's when the devil comes for you. I personally believe that negative entities exist, that spirits exist. Not just good ones, bad ones exist. Yin and yang. There's not just 1,000 good spirits and no negative. There's not just 1,000 negative spirits and no good ones. There's yin and yang, there's angels of a positive nature and angels of a negative nature. I believe every single human being has a familiar spirit. I believe Denzel Washington has a familiar spirit and Will Smith has a familiar spirit. I have a familiar spirit and you have a familiar spirit. But in addition to that, at such an event, I believe there's going to be most definitely high-ranking negative entities, perusing the crowd. Speaking of that, Ephesians 6:12. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. The heavenly places aren't necessarily all heaven. Slightly one tick above us, in a dimension stacked on the membrane above the lowest dimension, which is our current dimension we occupy, there's a dimension full of negative entities. When the Buddha meditated underneath the tree and he ascended, he first ascended through the low realms of the negative entities that were trying to harass him and bother him. And then he just kept going up, and then he saw the higher realms with the positive beings. But he had to go through that negative barrier. There's literally a barrier, spiritually, figuratively, metaphorically, but also literally on how the universe is built, the construction of the universe itself. There's a barrier of negativity. The old cream rises to the old saying, cream of the crop, good cream rises to the top. Whatever the case, I totally butchered that saying, but at the bottom is a bunch of crap, all right? And spiritually, there's a lot of crap in the dimension right above us, meaning we're below the crap. uh, the mundane, gross matter that is the physical is this dimension right here. We are the mundane and the gross. Not gross as in disgusting, but gross as in compacted matter. And the less compacted matter, the matter on a more light spectrum perspective, more refined, is the spiritual matter now. They say demons, jinn, are made out of fire itself, but they're not. That's just a metaphorical, symbolic representation of what they're made out of. They're made out of something we don't even know, all right? Spirit matter is ungageable by our devices, all right? We're the low, gross, mundane matter that can't even calculate on any scientific level of any great length and amount, which is why we can't prove spirits exist, but they do. I've had countless encounters with spirit entities, and I'm not crazy. All right? I'm not insane. But ever since I had encounters with spirit entities, I would say the first encounter I had super obviously with a spirit entity, other than an extreme positive one. Let's just go in the realm of the negative one. So I did have, as a kid, a positive spiritual encounter. I've never mentioned it once. Perhaps I'll mention it in the future. See, when you have a spiritual encounter, especially of a positive, extremely positive, good nature, like an angel or the Holy Ghost, don't throw pearls before swine. I'm not saying YouTube is swine, but check the comments. YouTube is not a place where your messages of positivity are going to be taken at face value. They're going to be shoved in the dirt and stepped and stomped upon to an extreme degree, which is probably one of the reasons I focus on the negative spirit entities, because if people don't believe those encounters, I don't consider those extreme pearls, but some of them can be pearls. But the first negative encounter that I can really remember to a really detailed degree is I went to an open house. My mom was a real estate agent, and it was totally empty, and she told me to turn off the lights in the left wing of this. It was a small mansion, I guess you could call it, but it wasn't really a mansion. It was a pretty big estate, enough that it had a left wing and a right wing. She turned off all the lights on the right wing. She told me to turn off all the lights on the left wing. And it was a good, 20 light switches. So I turned off all the lights, and I used the restroom, and all the doors are open. It's one of those houses where there's a bathroom, and then there's like a laundry room, and then there's a bedroom, and then there's another bedroom. And all the doors were open to the end bedroom. It's an unusual setup. I've never lived in a house with so many doors that you could just be open so far. But just to give you the perspective of the story. So I'm using the restroom with the doors open, no big deal, all the way to the end of the house on the left wing. And I don't care about closing the door. The door on the right was closed. So, my mom doesn't see me use the restroom. So I have some privacy. But as far as the left wing, I already turned off all the lights. I knew it was totally empty. There wasn't any furniture or anything. 100% empty house. And I hear a knock. It sounded like a human hand knocking in the closet, this open closet. I'm using the restroom when this knock starts. So I finish up and wash my hands. And I've said in the past, it's about 30 knocks. It was like, it sounded like that 30 times. 30 times to the point where I was standing in the closet and hearing it from 2 feet away. It sounded like a hammer or a fist knocking on a wall. And then it stopped abruptly. Then I went outside to see if some guy is doing repairs on the outside of the house. And no, there was no guy. I was looking for a branch on a tree, wind banging against the house. And no, there was no tree. I was looking for a shutter blowing in the wind. There was no shutter. It was a spirit entity, but I never realized it was a spirit entity until, I really had to calculate in my head, because this is what happened. I went to go see where my mom was, and she said, hey, you're supposed to turn off the lights. I said I just turned them all off, and they were all back on again. All of them. All 20 lights. So the knocking and the lights turning back on. Then I had to turn them all off a second time. And I made the comment on the way back home, hey, it's probably on for this place is probably up for sale because it's freaking haunted. So I kind of brushed it off, whatever. It was kind of a fun anecdote, a nonchalant story, no big deal, whatever. Many years later, I was harassed by demonic entities that used similar tactics and methods of knocking. Similarly, levitation I witnessed in 2018 after conducting a spirit investigation in the corner of my room. But that was 100% prompted by a 2011 incident of me being poltergeist attacked for 6 months. So I do have an inside perspective on the devil. 1 Peter 5:8, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. I have a little bit of inside perspective on the devil, okay? The devil literally sought me out and harassed me, assigned 2 demonic imp demons after me for 6 months in a row. Every single day. There was no break. They took no breaks. These demons took no breaks. So when I hear people like Bill Clinton say, oh, she worked like a demon. She was working like a demon. And the news, did whatever they wanted to do with that. He was trying to give you an idea of how frantically she was working, like a possessed person. But demons are pretty relentless. They work pretty hard. I have to admit, when I was demon attacked, poltergeist harassed in 2011, it was nonstop, except during most of the daylight hours. In front of my face, with the lights on, I saw multiple objects moved in front of my face. I'm not crazy, I'm not a crazy person. There is a spiritual dimension above our dimension. There are human beings that are influenced. Some aren't full-blown possessed. Some are just influenced. Entities whisper in our ear, okay? And we'll get a little bit of inside information. Let me give an example. Every single person has a familiar spirit. I have a familiar spirit. You have a familiar spirit. Will Smith has a familiar spirit. His wife Jada has a familiar spirit. Denzel Washington has a familiar spirit. Jim Carrey, familiar spirit. Rob Schneider, he has a familiar spirit. Regular people walking down the street, familiar spirits. So every time a human being goes somewhere, a familiar spirit follows. Every single human being has a familiar spirit. And we all have guardian angels that keep their distance dimensionally above even that. So while familiar spirits are following us on the dimension stacked one above, guardian angels are following us on a dimension stacked so high that even the familiars can't see the guardian angels until we seek great help and protection. Then on rare occasions, and they're always there, but on rare occasions they will make their presence known to the familiars and other lingering demons, and even the devil who walketh about as a lion, seeking whom he may devour. And some guardian angels, some archangels, whatever the case, they will say, hey, you're breaking the rules. And they're like, okay. So I kicked out negative entities in my presence on so many occasions I can't give it a number, 100 times easily. And I couldn't see the spiritual communication between the entities. I couldn't see it. It was invisible. But the poltergeist activity ceased for an hour. And I got the impression, because I did this in 2011, how many times did I kick the negative entities out of my room? I'm trying to think. I didn't write it down. I didn't make a journal at the time. And I'll tell you why. I didn't make a journal at the time because here's my perspective of 2011. Okay. 9:05 p.m. Demon moves box in my closet. 10:12 p.m. Demon plays with the pencils on my table next to the closet. Even something as plain and logical as that, I perceived that that would have encouraged the entity to push the envelope. The entity would have read my notes and said, "Hey, you're making notes of what we're doing, huh?" I have just the impression that these negative entities are limited on what they can do. They're limited on how they can manipulate their environment. And when they do successfully manipulate this dimension, our environment, they're greatly satisfied. They're happy that they can actually do something. I mean, they can't even open up, an A&W root beer. They can't do that. It's too tough for them. Now, if multiple of them really tried really hard, they could do it. And they would consider that a great achievement. I do believe that they have to be a high-ranking demon. They have to be a high-ranking poltergeist demon to pick up a bottle and open up the cap, kind of like the movie Ghost. You know, that subway ghost? He'd like to focus all of his energy to break the cigarette machine. And focus all of his energy to, kick the can. Focus all of his energy to push that cigarette packet, but he really couldn't open it up and smoke it. Human ghosts don't go to the demon dimension, despite what some Buddhist sects believe. In my personal perspective, some Taoist sects, Buddhist sects, they say that evil humans can become demons. I personally don't agree with that. I think demons are demons, humans are humans. Dead humans are dead humans. Demons never die. They're spiritually a different species to human spirits. And so it comes off as different religious perspectives. Like we have the Seventh-day Adventists that don't believe human spirits roam the earth. We have the Jehovah's Witnesses that don't believe human ghosts roam the earth. I'm not coming from that perspective whatsoever, because I do believe human spirits can roam the earth, on the rare perspective of a human just died. Many religions believe that 3 days after a human dies, and even 3 weeks after the human dies, the human spirit can linger. But after 3 days, 3 weeks seemingly being the maximum amount of time among many different religions, the human ghost ascends, and perhaps it can ascend sooner. Perhaps it can ascend later to the human ghost dimension, which is above the crappy demon spirit dimension. We got the crappy demon spirit dimension. We got the human ghost dimension. Then we have, as high as you can see, the angelic spirit dimension, and so on and so forth. That's how I see it personally. Jimmy Kimmel said, Jimmy Kimmel, I guarantee, he's probably a member of the Academy. Rob Schneider, he tried to join the Oscars Academy to be a member in 2003 and was rejected because he didn't have great range, because Deuce Bigalow, male gigolo, isn't exactly huge range. They want actors to have certain range. If you can prove you can be a dramatic actor, I think that's one of the requirements to join the Academy, or at least he wasn't successful back in 2003. I guarantee you, to this day, Rob Schneider is probably an Academy member. He's probably proven his acting chops, even if just comedically. He did have a show where I'm sure there are some dramatic moments in between the comedy. I guarantee you, if he tried back in 2003, he's a member right now. So the Academy is varied. Rob Schneider is just an example of a regular Academy member, I believe. And this is nothing personal against Rob Schneider. He's a hilarious guy. He's a funny guy. He's a cool dude, I'm sure. Okay, but Rob Schneider's not infallible. Rob Schneider is a good example of a regular, average dude. Okay, and I think Rob Schneider can be, have a negative entity whisper in his ear, vote for Will Smith. Vote for Will Smith. Perhaps that's how Will Smith won the Oscar. But I have watched a little bit of King Richard. I'm watching it right now on HBO Max. got a discount on HBO Max. It's going to end pretty soon. But King Richard, I'm like 20 minutes into the movie. I'm going to watch the whole thing. He's definitely a good actor. Will Smith is doing a good job. It's definitely a Oscar-worthy movie, most definitely. The Oscars, they try to look for the more serious, dramatic roles, and I could see why Will Smith won with King Richard. It's just a bittersweet connection with, he slaps a guy before winning the Oscar. In his speech, he's bawling. He's bawling because he realizes his lowest moment is back to back right next to his highest moment. It's a sad thing. I believe spirit entities spoke into Will Smith's ears. Defend your wife's honor. Slap that guy in the face. At any other award show, we're talking MTV Video Music Awards, the Golden Globes, the Razzies. It doesn't matter how Kids' Choice Awards. It doesn't matter what awards show. If the winner of the award, it doesn't matter how front row the person is, just walks up and slaps a person and tells a joke. It's unacceptable, uncalled for. It's not in Will Smith's character. You know, Will Smith talked about The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. An amazing book, The Alchemist. Have you read it? Check it out. It's a book which talks about eagles flying in the sky and how a guy watching those eagles can see divination, can see what's going to happen in the future based on how eagles are flying. It's a movie about a movie. They're making a movie on it. The movie's going to be directed by the guy who played Morpheus in the original Matrix movie, but it's on hold. The movie is postponed, probably due to the quarantine. I know his name. He's an amazing actor. Cowboy Curtis on Pee Wee Herman. It's coming to me. His name. He wasn't in Matrix 4. It made me a little bit upset. He's an amazing actor. I greatly enjoy his acting in Matrix and in the John Wick movies. His name is Lawrence Fishburne. Lawrence Fishburne is going to direct The Alchemist. It's going to be a phenomenal movie. I'm glad they're postponing it to make it a better movie. So The Alchemist, I don't want to ruin it. Read the book for yourself. It's a phenomenal book. Talks about some biblical references, throws in the pyramids. The quest for riches isn't always physical, but sometimes it leads to physical treasures. I believe spirit entities can guard, gatekeep actual treasures in the earth. Gold hidden in the earth. Spirit entities have X-ray vision. Spirit entities can see through a human being. Spirit entities can also see through a mountain and see hoards of treasure. Spirit entities don't give a crap. Do you think a pile of rubies, a huge diamond, and the biggest gold nugget known to man is something that a spirit gives any thought of and cares about? Now, the only time a spirit entity cares about the biggest gold nugget on planet Earth just sitting there in a mountain, the only time a spirit cares about that is when a human walks by and almost discovers it. That's when the negative entity will be a dragon, a gatekeeper, and say, hey, let's make sure this human's worthy of this billion-dollar gold nugget. I don't think this human is worthy of the billion-dollar gold nugget. Make sure he trips and falls. Make sure he goes a different direction. Make sure a lot of vegetation blocks it. Make sure there's a landslide and covers it up. Perhaps that's what happened with the Lost Dutchman's mine. In the Superstition Mountains in Arizona, there was a mine with gold bars that were mined and smelted during a time where gold bars were illegal. There was a time when owning a gold bar was illegal in the United States back in the 1800s because U.S. currency, whatever the case, political reasons. They were hoarding bars of gold for wars, for, just for the stockpile of the United States Treasury. And at a point, it was illegal for the average person to hoard a bunch of gold bars. So that's why I think it's connected to that. But some guy finds a cave, finds a mine in the Superstition Mountains, and there's stacks and stacks of iron bars. And he's like, oh, that's unusual. Why is there a bunch of iron bars stacked up? Doesn't make much sense. Why would someone go to the extent and length of even making iron bars, let alone stacking them up? So he grabs a couple of these iron bars, takes them home. Or maybe he does it on the spot, but I'm pretty sure he took them home. And he was curious. So he scrapes the iron bars, and underneath the iron is solid gold. They're solid gold bars disguised as iron bars. I think the guy goes back a couple times, maybe gets a couple bars, but there's so many he can't get them all. Either he caused the collapse, there's many different stories, that he might have caused a collapse on the mountain to keep the cave entrance totally a secret. He was planning on digging it out later, and he couldn't dig it out. The avalanche caused so many boulders to fall that even he could never gain entrance to the cave ever again. Thus, the legend grew. Where is the Lost Dutchman's mine? With all these gold bars. But perhaps a negative entity saw the guardian, a dragon guarding this hoard of treasure, saw this guy, maybe considered him somewhat worthy, allowed him to take a couple bars out of the cave, and like a dragon guarding its gold treasure, and you've seen it a million times in fairy tales and movies. Dragons guarding their hoards of treasure. In cartoons, you've seen it all over the place. Lord of the Rings. A dragon just guarding its gold, I believe, is a symbolic message of actual negative entities gatekeeping actual treasure. They don't care about the treasure, but they care about human beings having access to the treasure, because these entities are obviously obsessed with power. And if they can keep power away from a human they consider unworthy, they will do so, just for their own kicks. If you're a million-year-old spirit entity, you're going to see the biggest gold nugget on planet Earth a little bit differently than a human being that could spend that gold nugget. These spirits can't spend it, but they can vicariously watch a human spend it. And perhaps they're not looking for a spirit that's worthy. Perhaps they're looking for a spirit that's unworthy. Whatever the case, it's possible a negative entity caused that avalanche to block that hoard of gold from any future humans ever finding it. It's not just about gold, it's about our spirit, our soul. Whether you believe that exists or not. I'm a ghost with a human body around it. You're a ghost with a human body around your ghost. Everyone has a spirit, everyone is a spirit. Spiritual things exist, spiritual things matter. Beyond what we can see with our eyeballs, I'm blocking some ultraviolet rays with my eyeballs with these sunglasses, because these are polarized sunglasses. They're blocking out different harmful spectrums of light that I can't see. But they do exist. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Spirits exist. Spirits are very subtle. Spirits can creak a house, they can knock on a wall. Spirits can pick up lint inside of a wall. They can levitate objects, they can stick their hand, if you will, through anything. I've seen spirits do some pretty impossible things, giving me the information on what they can and cannot do by process of elimination. I did witness levitation 2018. Spirit picked up my wires, picked up a good 6, 7 of my wires. Could have been 8, but I'm pretty sure there's about 6 wires on my desk. It picked up the wires and levitated them, and then it dropped them. And I saw that. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour, as a roaring lion. Don't be too scared of the devil, but don't cavalierly tempteth the devil either. I think I tempted the devil when I did the Corners of Rooms experiment 2018. Not the devil himself, but one of his minions. And one of his minions picked up some wires a couple months after that experiment, because that negative entity followed me and stalked me for a couple months after the Corners of Rooms experiment. When I thought everything's normal, everything's gone, everything's done, and I'm just gonna stay away, I'm not gonna be communicating with spirits in my room anymore. That's a little bit too hardcore, that's a little bit too freaky. Even trying to get evidence, even if I got evidence, it wouldn't be worth it, because my soul would be at stake. And let me give you an example. I did a Corners of Rooms. This is what I did. I watched a couple videos on YouTube. I watched one video by a guy who bought, I think he bought a REM pod by Gary Galko, a REM pod. It's a round device with 4 LED lights on it and an antenna, kind of like a theremin. You put your hand close to it, it goes ooh, 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 ooh. You know, it's just like a theremin. It can the field around your body, that natural static field that, you know, you rub a couple balloons together, you can get the balloon to stick to your hand pretty easily because there's a static field around your hand. Well, that natural static field around our body can be, you know, manipulated by that musical device called the theremin. You know, sounds something like that, whatever. Not a too popular musical instrument because it doesn't sound so great. I guess some of them are pretty cool, and you can hook it up to a guitar pedal and probably make it sound pretty awesome. But I've never purchased them. They're actually pretty expensive. But I bought a REM pod, popped it in the corner of my room, bought actually a decibel meter, which I didn't know turns off by itself. So that's why the decibel meter wasn't on during most of the experiment. I didn't know you have to hold down the button on the decibel meter. It kind of defeats the purpose. I like devices that are permanently on until the battery drains. Those are the best devices for a spirit investigation. There are many devices on a professional grade level, industrial level, that you have to hold the button down. It defeats the whole purpose. Next to the decibel meter, I had probably a EMF meter. I had another EMF meter. I had a recorder. I had another EMF meter. I have a geophone, which is just to detect seismic activity on the level of human footsteps. Human footsteps are going to cause a seismic, miniature earthquake, if you will, in the vicinity of the room you are conducting the ghost investigation. People hear footsteps all the time, but is it just a sound effect or is it actual creaking on the floorboards? So there are many ghost hunting devices. Geophone is a popular one. And I just do this I watch a video on YouTube. Some guy buys a REM pod. He turns it on for 10 seconds and he puts it on a table and he looks at it for 10 seconds and then he turns it off. And then he talks about his 10-second experiment for like 15 minutes. And he says, well, the ghost hunting device doesn't work. I had it on. It doesn't work. I had it on for 10 seconds. It doesn't work. And I was like, whoa, dude, you need to have that thing on for an hour. And not only do you have to have that on for an hour, you have to talk about ghost stories. I'm wearing my Winchester Mystery House shirt, of all things, just coincidentally. So during my Corners of Rooms experiment, I talked about the time I ghost investigated the Winchester Mystery House. The Winchester Mystery House doesn't allow cameras, doesn't allow audio recorders, doesn't allow ghost hunting equipment, obviously. So when you go on the tour, you can't even use your phone. You pretty much got to keep your phone in your pocket the whole time. If you pull it out, you're going to get busted and maybe kicked out of the tour. They definitely warn you, no photography whatsoever. But I'm a bit sensitive, all right? I can feel when spirits walk through me. So I'm able to skirt the rules on ghost investigating anywhere I go because I can just get a sense of the depth of the spiritual, positive or negative or neutral residence vibe, if you will, of a location. And I walked through the entire tour. Didn't notice anything except for in the second room I walked in. So the first room is the barn entrance, and they just tell you the rules. The second room is a tiny, I have called it the saddle drawer room. You pass the antique wagon that was owned by Sarah Winchester. And I guess you can call it a hallway, but it's really not a hallway more than it's just where the wagon sits. You pass it and you go into the second room, which has huge drawers. So huge, a horse saddle can go inside of them. And because of the huge drawers, it's so narrow, only one single file at a time person can go through it. So I stepped into the room, I think right foot first. I think I stepped my right foot first in the room. And it felt like I stepped in a puddle of water. And there's no water. There's nothing in the room. But I felt a reverberation immediately on a spiritual level. And it was a negative entity in that room to an extreme degree. I walked through it. Pretty freaky stuff. Thank you for watching. I have to go to dinner now. Got a dinner appointment. Stay tuned. More episodes coming soon. Thank you for watching. Be seeing you.